welcome to another episode of 30 Minutes in that New Testament. 30 Minutes in the New Testament is a 1517 Podcast Network podcast. You can go to 1517.org/podcast and check out all the other podcasts that are living over there. And while you're over there, you want to check out everything else that 1517 is doing, of course. All the articles, all the academies, all the events, and, of course, go to the donate page. That's how all this is possible. So if this podcast or anything else that 1517 is doing, it's been a blessing to you. If it's served you, know that you can support that work and keep it going by becoming a reoccurring contributor. And thank you so much to those of you who do that. If you want to become one of those, we would encourage you to do so. Guys, we are in Matthew chapter 26. We just got through the institution of the Lord's Supper. We made a lot out of that, which rightfully so. And they're still there. And they're going to sing a hymn, and then they're going to go out. And Jesus is, has anyone in the history of the world tried to drive a point home over a period of time more than Jesus has tried to drive home the point that he is going to go die? Has anyone tried to do something more times unsuccessfully than Jesus with his disciples on this particular point?
Yeah, it seems like he can say it in many, many different ways, and every time they're just sort of like, "Oh, I'm good. I don't know."
Yeah. Or even if they do
right
get it, they're like, "No, we're not. We're not letting that happen. We're not doing that." That's what's going to happen here. It's like, okay, I think I understand what you're saying, but I object.
Yeah. And so, we pick it up at Matthew 26, verse 30. It says, "And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Then Jesus said to them, 'You will all fall away because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee.' Peter answered him." Of course, Peter answered him, "Though they all fall away because of you, I will never fall away." You just picture him like pointing at his fellow disciples like, "Hey, I know these guys. I get it. But me, you know me. I'm good.
Well,
I'll be with you."
One of the crazy things about it, too, is that Jesus says, all right, this is what's going to happen. You're going to all fall away because of me this night. And the reason this is going to happen, and I know it's going to happen, is because the scriptures say, and Peter's like, I don't really care what the scriptures say. Let me tell you, that's not going to be the case.
I mean, I know the scriptures say it, but they're not talking about us. They're not talking about me.
Not me. Well, it's like, I didn't stutter when I said all. Jesus chose his words correctly here.
That's right. And so Jesus says to him, "Truly I tell you, this very night, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter said to him, "Even if I must die with you, I will not deny you." And all the disciples said the same, which I think that's important to take note of, because a lot of the time, people kind of pick on Peter, for being so bold and brash. We do too. I mean, that's, kind of par for the course, because he does put his foot in his mouth a lot of the time. But he is the leader, and as the leader making these promises, of course, the other disciples go on to copy him. No, I'm going to be with you too. Don't worry. I'm loyal. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is an interesting thing that happens here where, and Jesus just kind of leaves it after this. And what you're going to see is, if you can't pray for a little while with Jesus, like, you can't die with him. Like, this is when you're going to find this out. So Jesus is going to let the next events do the talking for him, I think. Yeah. But yeah, the idea here is, and he even has this thing, like, isn't this so like us? So Jesus is going to say, hey, here's the bad news for you. You're all going to fall away because of me this night. Like, tonight, it's going to happen. Yep. You're all going to bail. Like, you're not going to stand with me. It's not going to happen. And the reason this is for sure going to happen is that it has been prophesied. Like, the shepherd's going to get struck. The sheep are going to scatter. That is what's going to happen. Yep. And then he gives them this great gospel-y thing at the end of it. But, hey, after I'm raised up, I'll go before you to Galilee. So he's saying, like, this is what's going to happen. Good news, though. I'm going to be raised up. It's
not the final word.
Yeah. And of course, they, don't grab onto that at all, and instead just say, yeah, we're not, this isn't going to happen. I mean, Peter's like, there's no way. First of all, I'm not going to fall away. Second of all, if you die, I die. That's what's going to happen here. Totally letting the resurrection just go right over their head.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anything that they clearly don't understand, it's the idea that he's going to raise up individually. I mean, they might have a vague concept of a general resurrection, and that's probably what's going through their mind at this point. Like they clearly just don't understand the program at all.
Well, isn't it implied or more than implied in this that Jesus is saying, like, you're going to abandon me?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be raised up, and I'm going to go before you to Galilee. So, in other words, but I will not abandon you. Like, he doesn't say, and when I get raised up, like, I'm going to find new guys because you guys have proven yourself to be unfaithful. There's none of that. This is what's going to happen. I'm going to be raised up, and I'm going to come for you, right?
Yeah.
You will be faithless, but I will be faithful, which is the theme.
Yeah, this is totally right in that text, right?
Yeah.
And they don't see that part of it.
Yeah.
Yep. And to show that they don't see that, we pick it up at verse 36. Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." And taking with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me." So he's commanded them. He's told them what he wants them to do. Just sit here and watch. Just sit here and watch. And going a little farther, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, "My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." And he came to the disciples and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, "So could you not watch with me 1 hour? You who boasts so proudly that you're going to die with me? You couldn't even stay up for an hour and pray with me?" I don't know, man. I think you're showing your true colors here, Peter.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I mean by he just kind of Jesus doesn't have to, rebut Peter's argument here when he says this. He's like, okay, well, let's go over here and pray. And Peter he can't pray. By the way, sympathetic. Like if anyone's like, hey, you want to come pray for an hour?
I've always felt it pretty easy to beat up on these guys, but if it's dark outside and I get slightly comfortable and you make me stop moving or standing, and I've seen Eric do this too. It's going to take about a second and a half, and I'm going to be
yes.
out.
I will be the first one to admit that I can fall asleep at the drop of a hat. This is correct. But
nighttime hour prayer is like that's a rough one.
But I mean, so context though. I mean, they clearly see that he is. I mean, in tremendous
I'm just saying,
stress.
it might not matter. I might still fall asleep. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, Matthew doesn't report it, but Luke does report that like he's literally sweating drops of blood.
Yeah.
And so you would think that might have more of an impact on them, and so like
I might still fall asleep. That's all I'm saying. I do think it's interesting that we give, or I do at least as we've gone through this, just sort of a lot of guff to Peter and James and John for always being like, "Hey man, who are going to be the 3 leaders among the 12? It's gonna be us, right?" But he does always seem to take them with him. And this is reported by Matthew. It's not like Matthew saying, "And he took me and James and John." He's like, he took the sons of Zebedee, sons of thunder here, James and John. He took Peter, and this is just like an over and over again thing that he seems to do.
The thought that they have is not unreasonable. It's just uninformed.
Right. Yeah, so you can kind of see where they get the impression, and even their mom gets the impression that they might be the first in the kingdom of heaven.
And if there's certainly if there's a hierarchy of disciples, like Jesus has made it clear that like, hey, I have an inner circle, and this is
right.
who it is,
which is natural.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that struck me when we just read this is that my entire life, like the angst of Jesus here has been the focus of it. When somebody's teaching this, has been the fact that he's going to just suffer the physical suffering and die, which is bad, right? So he's going to be crucified. This is a horrible form of death. But time, very time sensitive in his case, right? It happens, and it's for him even it's fairly quick. Like they don't even have to break his legs at the end of the day to kill him. He gives up spirit and he dies on the cross. There's more going. My point is, there's more going on here. Like he is not he is not just like overburdened by the fact that he's going to be tortured and killed. Like this is the physical torturing and killing is not what is overbearing his soul at this point. You
No.
really do get a sort of, it's not laid out in, in didactic words here, teaching you the atonement, but you really do get a sense here of Jesus taking on the sin of the world on this cross, and that it is like, if there were another way, he'd love to go down that other path instead.
Well, and you can, I mean, contextually, the reason that you can say that it alludes to the whole picture, not just the physical crucifixion, but also the spiritual wrath of God being poured out upon him, is that word cup that he uses. Let this cup pass from me. And we know that most of the time in the Old Testament, when the cup is talked about, it's talking about the cup of God's wrath. So that seems to indicate what you're saying, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, I think the forsaken element of this is like a big, huge thing here.
Yeah,
where,
the turning the back, God turning the back on him.
Yeah, and I think that you have to remember, like, do you think it was the ultimate thing that Jesus is facing down here is the cry of dereliction that will come out of his mouth, which is, my God, why have you forsaken me? And he knows he's going to have to go through that. And this is certainly the worst part of this, right, is that God will forsake his son so that he may never forsake sinners like us. This is the whole exchange.
And that's my point, because you don't get him crying out in that same way at all the other terrible parts of this.
Right. And I think that also a very human thing that Jesus just got saying, like, hey, all my friends are going to leave me.
Right.
And they're going to leave me to do this alone.
The forsakenness has already begun.
Yeah, and that's the way it has to be. But if you've ever gone through, and no one's ever gone through anything like this but Jesus, but people have gone through hard things, no one wants to. It's very difficult to go through hard things, never mind going through them alone, And so that this sort of, like, yes, the Father's going to forsake me, but these men who I've been with for the last 3 years, whom I love, they're all going to hit the bricks. Like, they're going to abandon me, and this way that Jesus is going to, and this is important, but Jesus is going to do the work of salvation alone. Like, and this is a big like when we say, like, Christ alone, this is part of what we mean that you can have no other hope except for in Christ, but also part of that is because he has done this alone. Like, there's no one aiding him in this work. He faces down the sin of the world, the wrath of God, hell, death, the devil, all of it, and he does it alone. Like, this is his work.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not a work you're looking forward to the night it's going to happen.
Yeah. So he continues speaking to his disciples in verse 41, saying, "Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak."
That'd be like me going, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying here, Jesus. Spirit's willing, flesh is weak, eyes are heavy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Again, for the second time he went away and prayed, "My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done." And again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. Again, I'm no judgment here. I totally relate. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the third time, saying the same words again. Then he came to the disciples and said to them, "Sleep and take your rest later on. See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand."
You really see Jesus come through, I'm not trying to psychologize this here at all, but you see him come through a process here. Like, he enters this Garden of Gethsemane and this prayer at a pretty vulnerable point, in a sense, and he leaves it saying, "Okay, it's go time. I got to go do this thing."
Seems pretty resolute at the end of it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like, the warrior apprehension as the battle is coming, but once the battle is upon him, it's time to fight.
Yeah,
I just want to make one note about this from an apologetic perspective. One of the criteria for determining the truthfulness of a document or something is the criteria known as the criteria of embarrassment, or embarrassing details. And this might not seem all that embarrassing to us today, but the way the hero of the story, the way Jesus is portrayed here as seemingly waffling about what he has to do, would have been seen as something you wouldn't want to include in this story back in the first century. I mean, if you read, like the story of the Maccabees or whatever, they're always presented as like absolutely resolute, not waffling at all. That was the way heroes were presented. And here, this is one of the reasons that this is a true account, because it's sharing something that wouldn't necessarily leave the reader prone to thinking that Jesus is the kind of hero they expect. And the same thing with the embarrassing detail of what we'll see when Peter denies Jesus. I mean, he's the leader of the early church. You wouldn't want to include that in this if you're making up or cooking up a story, unless, of course, you're not, and it's actually true.
Yeah.
So, just side note, but
and another thing you can pull from here, well, two things. One is Jesus sort of at the end of the day, like sort of submitting himself to this plan, because it is the only way, and this is the great takeaway. Salvation is only available to you one way. There's only one way that this can be done. If there was another way, you got to be like, well, actually, now that you mentioned it, yeah, okay, well, let's
there
go
was
with
this
plan B.
other way.
There is no plan B. There is no other options. The only way to salvation is through this.
Yep.
Which is why, again, going to Christ alone, like anything that you add to salvation this is why it's such an offense. Because I mean, look at what salvation is, and look at what it cost. What are you going to bring to this that is unoffensive? What could you possibly contribute to this? And the answer is nothing, of course.
Yeah. So verse 47 says, while he was still speaking, Judas came, one of the 12, and with him a great crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, the one I will kiss is the man. Seize him. And he came up to Jesus at once and said, greetings, Rabbi, and he kissed him. Jesus said to him, friend, do what you came to do. That is just like one of the saddest lines in all of the Gospels. Like that whole moment, because Judas might have in mind that he is sort of fooling Jesus, or that Jesus doesn't know. And yet Jesus does know and still refers to him as friend.
Yeah, that had to be very convicting, I would assume, to Judas here.
Well, in Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ, I think he does a really good job of showing that in the facial expression of Judas when Jesus says that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What have I done?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and also, to betray someone with a kiss is rough stuff. That is not what a kiss is for. I actually think that that Judas would say, I'll go up to them, I'll point him out, I'll literally go and kiss him. I'll just kiss him on the cheek. That's how you'll know.
Mm-hmm.
This tells you that Judas already knows that Jesus said that he's going to do. Like, he knows that Jesus knows that this is what he's going to do. And Judas is so confident that Jesus isn't going to react in any way. He's not going to. There's nothing's going to happen to him, that he can confidently go up to him and kiss. If I knew that somebody knew that I was going to betray them, I wouldn't be like, well, let me get as close to him as possible.
Yeah.
No, I'd be like, this guy's going to shiv me when I get close to him. But he knows Jesus is not going to do anything. And of course, what does Jesus do? He calls him friend, which has got to be a complete gut punch.
Yeah.
That he's saying, hey, you know me, you could get this close to me, and nothing would happen. And because I am your friend, do what you came to do. And this is, it's pretty rough. Sometimes you have to lean into the humanity of Christ here, and you got to think, one of your best friends betraying you over to your enemies, very real enemies, in this way, that's pretty brutal for Jesus too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not merely the forsakenness that he will experience on the cross that is his pain here. It is also the very real pain of being abandoned and betrayed by the closest people you have.
No, all the being forsaken starts right now. It's just nothing but forsakenness for a while.
Yeah, yeah. So we pick it up. It says, Then they came up and laid hands on Jesus and seized him. And behold, one of those who were with Jesus stretched out his hand, Peter, and drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. Then Jesus said to him, Put your sword back into its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? But how then should the scripture be fulfilled, that it must be so? At that hour Jesus said to the crowds, Have you come out as against a robber, with swords and clubs to capture me? Day after day I sat in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me. But all this has taken place, that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled. Then all the disciples left him and fled.
Yeah, this is they really realize that he is really not going to fight back at all. He is completely submitting to this thing.
Yeah, he's not who we thought he was. Is what you get here. They're like, I mean, he says to them, it's an interesting juxtaposition. He says, I don't need 12 disciples with swords to protect me. Because if I asked my Father 12 legions, which is like 72,000 or something like that, angels would come and protect me. So that's just the 12 and 12 juxtaposition is interesting, but they get it at this point that he is not going to be who they wanted him to be. And
this is the moment of disillusionment for the disciples.
Yeah, it's probably the first time they understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also, you do have to ask the question, is Peter really good with a sword or really bad with a sword? Because it's definitely one of those two.
Yes, you do have to ask that question, because if he's really good, that's great aim.
But
chances are that's probably not the case.
He sliced the guy's ear off, which is if that's what he intended to do, that is
amazing.
I would feel like that's pretty difficult. But if he was trying to cut this guy's head off, I'm like, oh, this is a fisherman that also owns a sword.
Yeah,
which is
that's me.
I'm guessing more likely.
More likely, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, but this is the thing with the disciples, right? Peter's like, all right, let's do it. I told you I'd be willing to die for you. It might happen tonight. And Jesus just is like, dude, it's like, my issue is not lack of protection. I don't have a lack of protection issue. If I don't want to be taken, I'm not going to be taken.
Don't you think you have to see Peter's statement more like, this is it. I'm with you. When we go into battle,
yes,
I'll die with you in battle if necessary.
Yes.
And then the reality is that Jesus isn't going into battle. And that's when Peter's like, I mean, obviously Peter would go into battle with him. I mean, I'm going to give him that.
Yes.
Obviously, if
you can see the sincerity behind the statement, he means it if Jesus fulfills his picture of what Messiah is supposed to do.
Right. He's willing to go into battle with Jesus. He's just not willing to sit there like a lamb to the slaughter and be slaughtered like Jesus.
Yes.
And not defend himself and not fight back and not make it a battle.
This is the
That's
tougher
exactly
calling.
right.
I mean, there's lots of, this is still true today. Lots of Christians that might be willing to, go to war for the Lord. But that's not exactly what he's called us to do. What he's called us to do is something that we really don't want to do, which is like, oh yeah, you might get martyred and die.
Well, and Jesus even says, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. I think Peter's saying, like, yeah, no kidding. I thought that was the plan.
Yeah.
Like, of course I knew that was the plan. Hence I said, when we go into battle, I'll die with you.
Yeah.
But that's not.
This is not the plan.
That's not the plan.
Yes. So it becomes clear to the disciples, and that's not a very popular thing for them, as they all leave. And we pick it up at verse 57. It says, Then those who had seized Jesus led him to Caiaphas the high priest, where the scribes and the elders had gathered. And Peter was following him at a distance, as far as the courtyard of the high priest. And going inside, he sat with the guards to see the end. Now the chief priests and the whole council were seeking false testimony against Jesus, that they might put him to death. But they found none, though many false witnesses came forward. At last, two came forward and said, This man said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to rebuild it in 3 days. To be fair, that is kind of a paraphrase, although not understood, of what Jesus did indeed say. And the high priest stood up and said, Have you no answer to make? What is it that these men testify against you? But Jesus remained silent. And the high priest said to him, I adjure you by the living God, tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus said to him, you have said so. But I tell you from now on, you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest tore his robes and said, he has uttered blasphemy. What further witnesses do we need? You have now heard his blasphemy. What is your judgment? They answered, he deserves death. Then they spit in his face and struck him. And some slapped him, saying, prophesy to us, you Christ. Who is it that struck you?
Man, of all the people are often like, man, I would hate to be Judas. I'm like, yeah, being Judas would be horrible. I would not want to be Caiaphas. Like at the end of the day, this part of the story is just, they are just becoming a trope of what Jesus has always accused them of being here. They're a comic picture of themselves here. The whole tearing their clothes at the offense of hearing blasphemies, they're like a more self-righteous sort of thing that you could possibly. I am so upset by those words. I'm going to render my clothes asunder.
Well, it's all performative. I mean, it's
also
all
Shakespearean.
Well,
yes.
Dude, and you're doing it like it says. I mean, it says straight up that we're asking people to bring some false testimony. Anyone willing to lie? Anyone willing to lie about this guy?
Yeah.
And they're okay. And then you finally get these guys to take Jesus' words and twist. Jesus said, "You destroy this temple, and I will rebuild. I will build it in 3 days." And they said, "He said he would destroy the temple." Well, I mean, he said you would, and he was talking about the temple of his body, and you are going to do that. But
He even clarifies that, by the way.
yeah, he does. Yeah.
Yes.
But besides all that, Jesus is like, if I wasn't a dead man before, here we go. Like, are you the Christ, the Son? Are you the Son of God? And he says, yeah, you said it. And
I adjure you by the living God, tell us the thing that will give us the right to kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, when Jesus does respond, he is very clearly alluding to Daniel. And that was universally recognized, that passage, as being about the Messiah.
The Son of Man.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, you got to remember, too, like these particular guys are not going to see Christ, probably, the risen Christ. He's probably not going to, he probably didn't appear to Caiaphas. So when he says, like, you've said that you've said it, and the next time you see me, it's not going to be good. Like the next time you see me, it's going to be right hand of power coming on the clouds.
Well, and that's yet to happen. This is my point. That's yet to happen for Caiaphas.
Yeah. Like that's still coming. And,
that's still coming.
And I think too, like, and I think you guys will agree. Like when you get to this, like you get the rending the garments, and then you have this. He deserves death, and then this, man. Like they spit in his face, and they strike him, and they slap him, and then they say, "Prophesy to us, you Christ. Who is it that struck you, dude?" At this point, like the demon possession is taken. Like this just sounds so demonic.
Yeah. Pandemonium, just like people who were sitting there, respectable people on the high council, trying to render out judgments that are within the justice of God, and now all of a sudden they've just devolved into a mess of people that are willing to spit and assault and demonic.
Hit people and like from all different directions. Say, who was it? It's. Yeah, there's something profoundly like wicked about it, right? Where you're like, that's even if they thought they were bringing out justice, this isn't what justice looks like. This isn't what you do. Like this is like the devil having a moment here, where where he gets to mock God in this way.
And as we wrap this thing up, of course, this all is necessary and is the lengths to which Jesus will go in order to save you, fellow sinner who was listening to this or watching.
Well, and if you wonder why like some of this stuff is necessary, yes, Jesus takes on sin and death, all this stuff. A big part of what he takes on too is shame, and like Jesus it is necessary for him to endure the sort of public shame, and this is all
guilt.
part of that. Yeah,
not just perceived guilt, but actual
He
guilt.
literally understands everything we go through as human
Because
beings.
because people will like sometimes be like, okay, your sins are forgiven. Like, wait, what do you do with all this shame? And you're like, well, that's all part of it. Like,
Well, it's like this guy is saying, "I adjure you, blaspheme," and he says, "Okay, blasphemy."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it, man. We are out of time. Next episode, we'll see how Peter responds to all this, and see if Jesus' words come to pass. They do, just like all of his other words. But we'll see if we can also find some sympathy for Peter, because this has got to be a very disturbing thing for him to watch. And
Dude,
so,
I just read it and I feel sympathy for Peter.
Yeah.
yeah. So we'll get into that next episode. I'll see you guys then.
All right. Sounds good.